The subcommittee will come to order. Before we begin, I'd like to ask unanimous consent for our colleagues, Congresswoman Jackie Walorski from Indiana and Congressman Ron Kind from Wisconsin, to sit on the dais and participate in today's proceedings. Without objection, so ordered. Good morning, and thank you all for joining us for today's legislative hearing. There are 9 bills on our agenda this morning and 3 panels of witnesses ahead of us, so I'll keep my comments short in the interest of time. The bills and legislative proposals that we will discuss this morning address a number of critical issues facing our veterans and the Federal agency tasked with caring for them, the Department of Veterans Affairs. Those issues include how to help struggling VA medical facilities, how to increase access to care for wounded warriors and those who have experienced military sexual trauma, how to improve the quality of the adaptive equipment provided to disabled veterans, and how to add fairness to the VA's broken billing system. I'm particularly interested in our discussion surrounding Vice Chairman Bill Araka's draft bill, the PROMISE Act, which would address the over-reliance of opioid medication amongst our veterans. This subcommittee has been and will continue to be aggressive in our oversight of VA's pain management programs. To be sure, chronic pain is complex and difficult to treat, and prescription medication overuse is a national problem that is not unique to the VA healthcare system, but far too many of our veterans are going to VA facilities looking for ways to cope with their pain and being given nothing more than multiple prescriptions for high-risk medications. Some of these same veterans come to the VA already heavily reliant on a cocktail of medications initiated in treatment while on active duty. Tragically, some of these veterans have lost their lives as a result of simply taking their medication as prescribed, or in some cases have succumbed to the dangers of having too many high-potency opiates readily and fatally available. One of those veterans is Jason Simakowski, who inspired the PROMISE Act and its companion bill in the Senate. We are too late to help Jason or to ease the anguish that his family, including his wife Heather and his father Martin, who have submitted statements for the record, have been left with. But we can promise to do better for those that come after him, and I believe that the PROMISE Act can help get us there. The last bill on our agenda today is a draft legislative proposal from the Department that would grant the VA the authority to enter in provider agreements. This is similar to a bill, H.R. 1369, that the subcommittee considered in a legislative hearing earlier this year. Provider agreement authority may in fact be critical to moving VA forward, but we must be careful that we do not take a short-sighted approach to solving one problem that VA is facing and as a result create a whole host of others. When considering whether to allow provider agreements that are not subject to the traditional Federal acquisition regulation checks and balances, I want to be sure that appropriate controls are in place to protect our veterans and the taxpayer dollars that are supporting them. I am grateful to the sponsors of the bills that are being considered today and to all of our witnesses from our veteran service organizations and the VA for being here to share their views. I look forward to hearing their testimony. And now yield to the ranking member, Ms. Brownlee, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for calling this hearing today. It's important for us to, I think, review the legislation that's been referred to this subcommittee, and it's important to hear from our colleagues on their priorities and to hear all views on how to best protect the health of those men and women who dedicate their lives to protecting this nation. I wanted to just highlight 3 bills today that I am a co-author on, and the first is Mr. O'Rourke's bill, which I believe will greatly improve and enhance the way we survey our veterans to get the data that we need to provide good policy in relationship to how well our veterans are served. Also, Mr. Peters' bill, which I believe, again, will enhance the VA's ability to hire more more marriage and family therapists to provide more resources and more professionals that we need for the mental health of our veterans. And finally, Ms. Walorski's bill, which would enhance adaptive technology in our automobiles to make sure that our veterans who need that will receive automobiles that are rated and classified, and support all three of those bills. I think all the bills before us are worthy, and I look forward to the testimony from our witnesses today and their views on how to improve upon the many bills that we are considering. So thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thanks. I'm honored to be joined this morning by several of my colleagues to speak in support of their legislation. With us today is the Honorable Beto O'Rourke from Texas, the Honorable Andy Barr from Kentucky, who's not quite here yet, the Honorable Matt Cartwright from Pennsylvania, the Honorable Scott Peters from California, the Honorable Martha Roby from Alabama, the Honorable Jackie Walorski from Indiana, the Honorable John Klein from Minnesota, who will shortly arrive, I hope, and the Honorable Gus Bilirakis from Florida. We are also joined by a veteran constituent of Mr. Barr's, Ms. Susan Mosley, who apparently is going to speak during Representative Barr's time about her personal experience accessing care from the VA. Thank you all for being here this morning, and thanks to Mrs. Mosley for your service. We will begin with Representative Bilirakis. Mr. Bilirakis, please explain your legislation. We have 5 minutes.
I appreciate it very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for holding this hearing and agendaing my bill. Chairman Benešík and the Ranking Member Brownlee and distinguished members of the House Subcommittee and my colleagues over. Thank you for holding this legislative hearing today. Today's hearing includes many important pieces of legislation that will improve the services and care for our veterans, the care our veterans receive for their dedicated service to our great nation. Among the bills under consideration in today's hearing is my bill, the Promoting Responsible Opioid Management and Incorporating Scientific Expertise Act, or the Jason Simkowski Promise Act. I appreciate the Chairman's leadership to bring this important issue before the committee and for allowing me to speak today on the Promise Act. The tragic death of Marine Corps veteran Jason Simkowski in the Tomah, Wisconsin VA medical facility prompted the need for congressional action. In August of 2015, nearly 1 year from Jason's death, the Office of Inspector General released a report titled Unexpected Death of a Patient During Treatment with Multiple Medications. The IG report concluded that Jason's cause of death was due to mixed drug toxicity with the potential for respiratory depression, and the combination of various medications was a plausible mechanism of action for a fatal outcome. Furthermore, the IG also found deficiencies in the informed consent process, confusion among staff when initiating cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and the absence of certain medications available in emergency situations to reverse effects of possible drug overdose. I request unanimous consent to submit this IG report, Mr. Chairman, for the record in today's hearing materials.
Without objection.
Thank you. As the guidelines used by the VA and DoD for opioid management have not been updated since 2010, it is due time to ensure those treating our veterans have the necessary resources and training to effectively treat veterans with chronic pain. I want to be clear, the intent of this bill is to improve patient safety, not to restrict access for those who truly need their prescriptions for their wellness plan. The Promise Act will increase safety for opioid therapy and pain management by requiring the VA and DoD to update the clinical practice guidelines for management of opioid therapy for chronic pain, ensuring VA opioid prescribers have enhanced pain management and safe opioid prescribing education and training, and ensuring encouraging the VA to increase information sharing with state licensing boards. We've discussed this in the past, Mr. Chairman. This bill also promotes needed transparency within the VA and will further our efforts to hold the VA accountable by requiring GAO to report on recommendations for improvements and assess the level of care veterans are receiving. Additionally, the PROMISE Act will authorize a program on integration of complementary and integrated health within the VA and encourage more outreach and awareness of the patient advocacy program to educate veterans on their care options. Our veterans have sacrificed so much for our country, and we have a responsibility to ensure they are receiving the quality of care they have earned and deserve. We must hold the VA accountable and encourage quality care for our veterans who have fought for the freedoms we enjoy on a daily basis. I want to thank the VSOs for their support and for appearing today to provide their testimony in today's legislative hearing. I also want to thank all my colleagues on this committee, in the committee, of course, in the whole House, for your sponsorship of this, co-sponsorship of this bill. And I appreciate it very much. Thanks for agendaing the bill. With this strong list of bipartisan support, we can send a clear message to the Simkakowski family, our veterans, and those that have been affected by such tragedies that we are dedicated to ensuring similar failures will never happen again. In closing, I'm grateful we are here discussing these important bills. I look forward to having substantive discussion on how we can improve the lives of our true American heroes. In upholding our sacred vow and promise to our veterans, I urge my colleagues to support this bill and co-sponsor the PROMISE Act. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. O'Rourke, you may proceed with your testimony. Thanks.